Hey everybody, welcome back. This is going to be an important one as we have some important things coming down the pike at the Supreme Court. That's right, we're going to be talking about the New York Rifle and Pistol Association case v. Bruen. We are counting down the days till we get a decision from the Supreme Court, and we've got a special guest to talk about it with. Well, I kind of wanted to address this as well. I mean, we're looking at potentially a what we would call a successful lawsuit, right? We're expecting a decision that we're going to like. Um,
Yeah, I don't want to jinx. I'm knocking on wood here. I don't want to jinx us, but yes,
Absolutely.
that's what
But
we're expecting, and the gun ban lobby is expecting that too.
right.
It's
But
just a matter how
as
strong that opinion is going to be. How far will it go?
well, as an advocate and an activist yourself, this is something that I encounter in the field. I actually kind of classify it as victory fatigue. We have cases that we are victorious on, we get good decisions on, we tell everybody about how we got a good decision on a lawsuit that we filed. But there's no like instant gratification. There's no practical thing that changes in somebody's life from one day to the next, and that creates a little bit of fatigue. At some point, a portion of the community come out and they say, "Well, like I understand that these good things are happening, but how is it changing my life?" What would your message be to those people who are seeing good things being reported, but aren't necessarily seeing it in their day to day?
Well, I guess that where you're really going to see it is in gun stores. I mean, there'll be a lot of subtle changes, but when you can walk into a California gun store, like you can walk into a Nevada gun store and buy a semi-automatic rifle, that's a concrete change because you can't buy one now, I mean, you can't buy a lot of different models now. Or when you go into a gun store in California and these guns that have not been kept on the roster of handguns that are approved for sale, they've fallen off the roster because the state has imposed this ridiculous microstamping requirement. If you can go in and you see those handguns in the cabinet, that's different. Okay, that's a concrete change. Or you go in to buy ammunition and you don't have to do a background check to buy ammunition anymore. That's a concrete change. Those are the kinds of things that people are likely to see, concrete changes that are right in front of before their eyes when we succeed or you apply to the sheriff and you can actually get a license to carry a firearm in public to defend
Right.
yourself or your family. Those are the kind of things that people can expect to see that will make a big difference in their lives and be tangible.
Right. Focusing on the Supreme Court here for a second, we've had Justice Thomas in the past kind of criticizing the Supreme Court for not taking up Second Amendment cases. He's also been quoted saying that the Second Amendment is treated like a second-class right. Those sorts of things to me scream the sentiment like, now I've got something, I'm going to make it count. On top of that, we have a pretty controversial decision that just got leaked from the Supreme Court, not having to do with firearms, but it would kind of point us in the direction of thinking this Supreme Court that we currently have doesn't necessarily have a problem with making large controversial decisions within the U.S. population. Is that kind of weighing into your opinion that we're going to get not only a good decision on this, but one that goes further than the claim on the right to carry, but when you go into scrutiny and the scope that we look through these, does that apply there?
Well, they're going to have to do scrutiny to evaluate carry. But here's the I don't know that the leak of the opinion that the draft opinion that overturns Roe is going to influence what the Supreme Court. I don't think it'll influence what the Supreme Court does or doesn't do with the Bruen New York case, although they'll make damn sure it's not leaked. And
Yeah.
we're still going to see it within a matter of weeks. But the biggest tell on this is that it looks like Justice Thomas, who you're right in noting that he dissented multiple times when the Supreme Court did not take a Second Amendment case to review, did not grant review, because review is discretionary. Remember, it takes 4 votes to take a case, 5 votes to win a case. So sometimes our 4 votes friends voted not to take a case because they knew they didn't have the 5th vote, so they didn't want to bring up a loser. But anyway, it looks like Justice Thomas is going to be writing the Bruen opinion. And that's a tremendous positive sign, because I think he is probably the biggest Second Amendment fan on the Supreme Court. And he's probably going to take the opportunity to really set the record straight, chastise some courts for their games that they played in trying to achieve a result that they wanted, rather than the result that the Heller or McDonald case should have dictated them to reach. So that's, if there's a tea leaf to read, that's a big one. If Thomas is
Right.
writing this opinion, that's a tremendously good sign.
So is it fair to say that what the evidence is pointing towards and what our expectations might be, this case sets a national precedent for the way that Second Amendment cases ought to be reviewed by, say, the Ninth Circuit Court or courts in general?
By every court, yes. This is the biggest, probably going to be the biggest Second Amendment decision of my lifetime, at least. I'm on the older side. Maybe some youngsters will see another one in the Supreme Court. You just don't know. You don't know how the lower courts are going to react. Some will resist. And depending on how far they go in bending the Supreme Court's decision to try and reach the result they want to reach, rather than the result that the Supreme Court decision says they should reach, that's going to decide whether or not the Supreme Court takes another case sooner or later. I expect the Ninth Circuit, although the Ninth Circuit is not as bad as it used to be, thanks to the Trump administration, because it's about 50-50 conservative versus progressive judges now. It used to be about 2-1 progressive. So that's, you can win. So the Ninth Circuit is not necessarily going to be as hostile as it used to be to Second Amendment lawsuits.
So bringing that to California. So, I mean, post Heller, there's time in between, things get, misinterpreted. That kind of arises the need for this case. After this, we're talking about, really honing down the scope or the scrutiny on these cases. What is the application to California after this decision comes down? I know that you already touched on the fact that a lot of these cases can get can get overturned. What is the process? What is your expectation of the amount of cases, and how do you see this pushing forward?
Well, initially there's a logjam in the Ninth Circuit right now between the Duncan case challenging possession of magazines that hold over 10 rounds, the Rhodey case challenging the ammo background check, the case that we have challenging LA County's restrictive concealed carry permit issuance policy, and the case challenging the black rifle ban. All of those cases are queued up and waiting for the Bruen decision. And so we're going to get some results in those cases fairly soon based on what the Bruen court says. Those will be, those cases are already fully briefed. They're in court. We'll probably have to do a supplemental brief discussing the Bruen decision and how it applies. But I think you're going to see a lot of cities and counties that are reluctant to issue licenses to carry. I think you're going to see them change their policy without having to be dragged into court to force them to, because they're going to see that this is the law now. And some of them actually act in good faith and follow it. So that's how it's going to play out in California. And then there'll be, we're building a legal war chest, and our lawyers give us great rates, don't get me wrong, and we do not waste any of that money that we get through funding, but it still requires funding to bring lawsuits. And so we're building a war chest, a legal war chest, to file multiple cases challenging the roster, challenging locked storage mandates, challenging a whole slew of local and state laws that really can't be justified as a legitimate public safety measure. They're really just ways to harass gun owners and discourage gun ownership, which is what the politicians really want to do. They want to murder the gun culture. They don't want people to have guns. They don't want people to be able to go to gun shows. They wanted to make it almost impossible for a gun store to operate. so that there's less and less people with guns, and so there's less and less people thinking like gun owners when it comes to politics. Interestingly enough, COVID kind of spoiled their plan
Yeah.
because so many people went out and bought guns as a result of the civil unrest, not just relating to COVID, but the whole Antifa and all that, defund the police, all those movements. Those have all made people wake up and realize they better be able to defend themselves because they really can't count on the government to defend them and their families.
Well, I think we even have Gavin Newsom on record saying that he wanted to end the gun culture in California. So I think you're absolutely right here. But what did we miss? What else is there about this case that can be influenced in California?
It'll be interesting to see how the left, how progressives respond to this. I know that when gay marriage decision came down, any conservative who dared to criticize that decision was called a bigot. So what is that going to make the progressives and left-thinking folk who don't want to accept the Supreme Court's ruling? I mean, inevitably, some of them will reject it, criticize it, rally against it, but some may actually think through the decision. Maybe they'll even read it, and they may rethink their position. We may see a change of mind and a change of heart among some of the folks who were against guns out of a sort of an emotional response. Maybe they'll think again.
And then perhaps add to the culture in the long run. Chuck, I want to thank you for coming on again. This is Chuck Michel. He is the senior partner at Michel and Associates. He is the volunteer CRPA president, and most importantly, he is an activist and an advocate. By the way, you guys, Countdown to Hope is the campaign here. We are counting down the days till we get this decision, the New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen. Thank you all. Thank you again, Chuck, for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.